Excited to be speaking with Alexandra Rojas. She is the Executive Director of Justice Democrats. Alexandra, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Ben. It's nice to meet you for the first time, by the way.
Pleasure is definitely mine, especially because I am a huge fan, and I don't like to use that word often in regards to politics, but I am a fan of the success of Justice Democrats in getting progressives elected to Congress and in different positions. Tell us about what you all do and the journey towards that success.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for having me on, and just want to say thank you really quickly to all of the TYT supporters that have been fans of Justice Democrats from the very beginning, because all of the victories that we've seen from Marie Newman to Cori Bush to Jamal Bowman have been because of them and people believing in us when so many would not. So just to say that. And I mean, what we're doing is really recruiting the next generation of leadership to enter Congress at a time where our country desperately needs it. And obviously, we didn't get involved when once the pandemic started, but it has really crystallized how important all of the work that we're doing is right now. And we can see, through the work of electoral politics and also merging this sort of social movement aspect of to our strategy has been really successful in making sure that cycle after cycle, at least for the past two that we've been in existence, we're actually getting seats in power. So it's not just putting up really, really good, which we have, and but it's also actually winning seats. And as I'm sure you know, and so does the rest of the TYT audience, is that this progressive bloc has a lot more power than we've seen in years in Congress.
And that kind of speaks to the climate of everything that's happening now, the squad, the vote for Nancy Pelosi and the fraud squad, all these different type of arguments that are going on now. Would you speak on not necessarily any of that context, but speak on the progressiveness and the background checking and the connectivity that you have? So three things: like, you guys know who you vet these people, right? And you help them get elected, but you also stay connected to them. So if anyone can speak in terms of the caliber of progressives that are up there, it should be Justice Democrats.
Absolutely. And just to give some insight, we're actually in our recruitment drive right now for 2022. So if folks have anyone in any part of the country that is a local leader, nominate them right now at justicedemocrats.com/nominate, or tell 5 of your friends to go ahead and look out, because we got nominations from all of our Justice Democrats, from their high school teachers, from their family members, from local education activists. It really takes a big effort. And I mean, I guess the thing I would say, and what we try to do, is be really humble with each of these victories that we do have, because there is so much to learn from these victories. There's so much to learn from these losses. And this is the first time, at least, as a young 25-year-old head of a grassroots organization, and watching folks like Cori Bush, folks like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Jamal Bowman enter Congress, whereas previously we had to convince them that this was even worth it, because they were concerned about whether or not they could afford to run, what they was going to do to their families, and all of the obstacles that they're facing right now, as they just got sworn in the other day. And so our approach has been to continue to build relationships as a new player, sort of on the Hill, where we've really looked at it as, now we've proven ourselves. We actually have a theory of change that works and has built a lot of power. And now it's getting to know sort of the institution on the inside, and working with a lot of these new members that are figuring it out for themselves. And a lot of this is not, a month-long process, a year-long process. It takes years, right? It's chess, not checkers. And so that's sort of the work that we're doing right now. And I think, as progressives in our name, right, we have to actually deliver. We have to create progress. And so what we're focused on is delivering immediate, tangible, visible results to address COVID, because if we don't, right, we have 80% of small businesses that are going to go out. We've got people that will literally be evicted and are not sure what's going to happen with their rent. The whole deal. We've got $2,000 checks that we could be giving to Americans right now, depending on how Georgia goes today. So I think how can we utilize our progressive bloc in the short term to actually deliver those immediate results, because we're going to need that in 2022 and 2024 as Democrats. And then in the long term, like, how can we, when we're not as in power as we'd like to be, how can we expand the social safety net? How can we expand Medicaid, especially in the middle of a pandemic, to make sure that we're sort of constantly building in these stimulus packages and obviously in future legislation.
Wow. There's a lot there, and there's a lot that has to be discussed. I want to hone in on one thing that you mentioned in terms of institutional power. Would you speak to the growth in institutional power for the left, for progressives, in terms of actually getting what is necessary in order to implement the change, and how Justice Democrats plays a role in that?
It's so interesting as I've sort of I logged on for the first time in a little while because I've been focused on some of the work that we have to do offline. Yeah. But I mean, it's, institutional left is sort of a funny term, because even though, yes, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and there has been a lot of work amongst the broader progressive movement for decades. At the same time, we don't have, I think, the sort of institutional, AOC, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush style left that I think a lot of people are talking about. And so Justice Democrats and a number of other progressive organizations that grew out sort of over the past 4 years and are starting to grow even more from their start, are really like taking shape to be able to, and now we have champions in Congress that are actually willing to carry the mantle on the inside. So a lot of the sort of ecosystem of support, at least at Justice Democrats PAC, we've been building over the past, 3.5 years on the campaign side, on the front end. That takes a lot of work, and we've gotten really good at that. And now we're focusing, at least as an organization, I know that obviously with new members, right, they're focused on really building out the same sort of ecosystem of support or institutional infrastructure building that we need on the Hill. And, it's these types of things when you're going up against, a 40-year plus institution like the Democratic Party are going to take time, but we have to be intentional. We have to be disciplined about how we build those out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one final question in terms of that institutional power, and it's specifically what Justice Democrat does. Can you speak to the concerns that people may have in terms of primarying existing Democrats and the institutional power that the Justice Democrats has to do that, but also the prerogative to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I clearly don't have a big concern, but I think where other folks' concerns lie, or I think our primary concern is the fact that 70% of elections in this country aren't even contested. It's only the general. And so the idea of living in a democracy where we do have a robust debate of ideas, where we have the choice to pick multiple candidates in elections, that's where our process is primaries is where that's supposed to happen, is one thing. I think also, it is, you could argue if you're sort of in the more moderate or centrist wing, that you build a lot of institutional knowledge being on the inside as an incumbent. You want to be in there to represent your constituents and do a good job for a long time. The institution itself rewards you for that, but it doesn't reward the American people when you have politicians in there for decades. And so our sort of concern there is again, democracy and actually having a robust debate about the future of what this country and what this party should look like, and be able to debate that in a more open setting, because no incumbent, no politician, regardless of party, should be beholden to their seat. We should have a democracy where it's more regularly practiced. So I think, and the last point that I'll end on in terms of the utility to our movement, I think it's one of the biggest tools in our toolbox in terms of actually making a competitive go at the establishment, whether it's Democratic or Republican, to be able to show that we actually are willing to build power. And if you're not going to, I wouldn't say necessarily fall in line, but if you're not going to be urgent in your seat, if you're not going to be responsive to the movements of our time, and especially young people and the base of the Democratic Party that's increasingly Black, brown, and young, then you need to step aside, and we're going to engage in, the tools of our democracy through primaries.
Awesome. Alexandra Rojas, Executive Director of Justice Democrats. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.